Okay, so in a previous video, we had shown you how to create the line graph. And so now what we're going to do is we're going to look at how to create our bar graphs. Now, the easiest way to create the bar graphs is actually to pull out the calculations that we've made and organize them so that they're easy to work with. We're going to need like labels and things like that. And so having the values that we want and the labels for the departments on the other side of the table, we can work around that, but it's going to be a little bit easier for on ourselves if we build a set of smaller tables that just collect the specific department names and the specific things that we want to put in the graph. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to calculate, I'm going to copy those into another table so that they're easier for us to work with. Now, there are a couple of different ways that you can create bar graphs that represent all of the data for the whole week. Now, we're going to specifically look at sales and profit for our bar graphs. So I'm going to copy my department names. And I've created a new blank sheet where I can copy those. And from the summaries, I'm also going to copy some of those other data. I'm going to copy the profit also. Make another table of that. All right, now we'll come back to these day of the week averages because we can use those as well. But the simplest kinds of graphs to make, as I said in a previous video, is to use the overall averages, not the individual ones. Now, our graphs should be made from the overall from averages, not from totals. So our averages, I can copy and paste these. I'm going to copy these. Now, when I copy this to another sheet, the formulas are going to try to update, and that's not going to necessarily be what we want in order to produce this graph. So when I go to my sheet 4, what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to paste this as values. Now, this is going to screw up my formatting, which I'm going to have to fix. But what it will do is it will break the connection with the formulas so that if I just update them, paste them with the regular paste option, all the cell references are broken, and I don't want that. So if I paste them with values, that it will update the number, it will post the numbers, but not the formulas. Remember, everything is relative in Excel, and so it's pointing at cells that are way off on the left side of our screen because we've moved the formula. You can also create this table by individually referring to, oh, I want to go to this table and I want to just point at this cell value. That will also work. Equals point at that cell value. That will work that way as well. And then notice that it understood, oh, that's what you want. And Excel tried to be helpful, and it filled in, not only corrected the formatting, but it corrected the formulas in the entire column. Now, you noticed when I pasted those that not only was the column too narrow to display the values, I got those hashtag errors. Those would have gone away if I had just widened the column earlier. And of course, I can go back and turn this back into currency, either using my currency option up here or one of these currency options from the $ menu. So even if I had pasted as values, my formatting was messed up, but I would have to go back and now for the profit, I'm going to do the same thing. And this time I'm going to just copy one value, overall average, and equals, and I'm going to pull this out from that's my cost. I want my profit. And then update those. And reformat as currency, and then now we're all good. Now, these are the easiest ways to build our bar graphs. And so we can just highlight the data, go to insert, recommended charts. You can do these horizontally or you can do these vertically. That's fine. Don't go crazy if you select the bar graph. You will get lots of different options. This one's fine. This one's fine. But don't do the stacked or things like that. Don't use 3D effects. They make the graph more difficult to read. Now, the bar graph in Excel is the horizontal version. If you want them sort of in a standard, more common format, which is the vertical version, use the column graph. You can choose the different colors or all the same color. Either one is fine, but again, don't do the stacked, don't do the 3D. So I'm going to select this one. I'm going to hit OK. And then, of course, this is the bar graph for sales. So I'm going to want to change the chart title to average sales per department. And I'm going to want an axis title departments, since each bar is a different department. And I'm going to want sales in dollars. Now, again, the profit, you would do exactly the same way. I'll do the other version of the chart. Recommended charts. Again, you can do it horizontal or vertical. It doesn't really matter. Average profit per department, and add axis titles. Department and profit in dollars. I basically can't spell, apparently. There we go. And of course, when you submit your graphs, make sure they're not overlapping the data, because that just makes everything harder to read. All right, now the advantage of using the cell references in these when you copy them into a new thing is if there's something wrong in your calculations and you go and you update them over here, they will automatically update over here. If you paste as values, as I did in this second one, if you paste as values as I did initially, then they will be static, and you will have to manually update them later on. All right, so those are our two bar graphs for sales and profit. But those are not the only things that we can do. We can also make graphs for we can use other averages to calculate these same graphs. So these are not the only options, but these are the simplest to understand. Now, another way that you can create these graphs is if you have your weekly averages, you can also make the graph from your weekly averages. So again, from the daily averages for each week. So this will be a little bit more complicated looking graph, but it will give you a little bit more detail, not just the overall average, but actually what they're doing each of the weeks and sort of how similar or different they are. So we're going to, again, create those. I'm just going to copy and paste my table names. But what I'm going to copy for this second example is not the overall averages, but it's going to be the week 1, week 2, and week 3 averages for sales. And again, paste as values. You may have to widen your columns and reformat You can, as I said before, also simply refer to the cell values. So for instance, for profit, if I referred to my profit week 1 average and then copied and then dragged my formula, and then I have to reformat because the formatting didn't carry over. Currency, I'm now good. Now, what this is going to do is that for each department, it's going to create 3 bars, but these will also still cover all of the data. And that's what these graphs have to do. You can't have one graph per week. You have to have one graph that covers all the data. So I'm going to highlight my graph, my data, and then I'm going to go to insert recommended charts. And now just to see the difference, because all of these versions are fine, you can do the horizontal version. That's fine. This is less common from a mathematics standpoint, but it's not all that uncommon from a business perspective. So that's also okay. But you need a good title, average sales by week per department. And you do still need axis titles. This is sales in dollars, and this is departments. Now, you can see that some of these numbers are kind of large and they're overlapping, but you can fix that by simply extending the size of the graph to account for that. And now each one of these bars is going to represent 1 week of data. And so you can see that some weeks they were a little more, a little less, but they're all basically in the same range. And you can do the same thing for profit. Now, because these do all add up in some sense, you can, for this one, do a stacked graph. It's not my favorite graph to use for this, but it does allow you to do a little bit different type of comparison than with some of the sort of cluster graphs, but it's fine either way. And so again, we're going to add a chart title. It should be descriptive. Average profit by week per department. And I need axis titles. If you can't find the pop-up on the side of the graph, you can find it up here on the menu, add axis titles, primary horizontal, primary vertical, we want both. Department and profit in dollars. So that's another way that you can make these graphs. And there's actually one more way from the calculations, which is using the day of the week averages. That's these guys. Now, this graph can sometimes cause some issues in terms of the formatting, but it is acceptable to make a graph out of this. So I am going to copy my table. Again, I don't need the overall average here. Generally, when you're making these graphs, you don't include the total. You just include the calculated values that you want to display. And I'm going to copy this and I'm going to put this into the bottom of my spreadsheet. Paste options, come on. Oh, it cleared my selection. Try again. Copy. Paste options as values. And again, it does sort of get rid of your formatting, but we can fix that in a second. And then same thing, the profit, you can also do this way. And notice the references are all screwed up, so paste as values. All right. Now let's do our reformatting. And this formatting looks good. And always when you copy and paste things, it's always a good idea just to go back very briefly and just make sure that it copied and pasted correctly. Now, from this data, what we can do is we can create another bar graph or column graph. And I would recommend doing this with clusters. And the thing to kind of keep in mind is the goal of the graph is to determine which departments are performing the best, not for our project, which day of the week is doing the best. So how the graph is organized is going to matter. So if we go to recommended charts, notice that the default value here is to organize it by day of the week. We do not actually want this. Sometimes you can fix this by going to all charts and you can see the correct option here. But I'm going to select this one because it is the default. And I'm going to show you how to change it to the other one after you've created the graph. So again, here's our title. We need to fix the title. Average sales by day per department. Now, before you add the axis titles, it's better to fix this first, then to add the axis titles, because the titles will change as soon as you, at least the horizontal one, will change when you reorganize this. Now, in Excel, there's an option here to switch the row and the column. And what they mean is in terms of the table, not the graph. So sometimes people try to do this for other kinds of graphs and it doesn't always work, but it works well for this, for the bar graph. So if I switch it, now it's organized in a better way for us. It gives us the same information that the previous graphs did. And now we can add our axis titles. From this perspective, it is much easier to see which departments are doing the best. Whereas in the daily version where it was organized by Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, that was much more difficult to see. You could kind of see like, okay, who's the biggest one, but it became more difficult to see like who is second and third. Or that organization based on that organization. And so we can do the same thing for profit. Insert recommended charts. Again, organized by day of the week, but it's a little easier to read if we organize it the other way. And again, you can do this before you do the graphs. But again, some of these stacked ones, they're not helpful because the sales, this is emphasizing the sales, the total sales by day of the week. This one is emphasizing sales by department. You could do this one. And of course, this is the organization that we would prefer for this graph. So you can often get them from the recommended charts, or you can go to all charts and then you can select the one that is organized by department, or you can choose, if you choose the wrong one, you can still change it after you create it with this switch row and column option. But as with all of our graphs, we want to make sure we have a descriptive title, average profit by day per department, and axis titles to say what is being graphed on each axis. And this is profit in dollars. All right, so those are our bar graphs, sales and profit, 3 different ways to make each kind of graph.